The latest tag in container images gets a bad rep, and for good reasons, can cause confusion and broken builds. But I think it can also often be the best and most secure option. Don't believe me? Well, watch the rest of this video and I'll prove it. First, let's jump to the terminal for a recap of what the latest tag is and how it works. Okay, so let's see what the latest tag is. So I can do docker pull nginx latest, and that's going to pull the version of nginx from the Docker Hub that's tagged latest. And now the important thing is that I can also just do docker pull nginx. And what that does is it says using default tag latest. So it's actually pulled exactly the same image as before. And that's basically all there is to the latest tag. It's actually not even guaranteed to exist. So for example, that doesn't work, but Chainguard does support it. It is just a convention, but that convention is that the latest tag will point to the newest version of the image. And as we see, that's supported by Docker official images and Chainguard containers, but not Docker hardened images. So what's the problem? Well, the major problem is that if you have a Docker file that looks like this, you don't really know what it's going to build or do. If I run it today, I'm likely to get a very different result than when I run it next week or the week after. And you're likely to get a different result when you run it on your own laptop. So this image can basically change at any point, and the changes could well break later statements in the Docker file. So for that reason, you'll normally find advice telling you to specify the versions of images you need, which can look like that. And this is an improvement, but as it's just a tag, it can still change. So it's still possible to end up with different results from running this build twice. And worse than that, we need to keep this version number up to date, and it's not clear from this exactly how we plan to handle updates. Like, is this version of Go important to this Docker file? And I'll come back to that later. A much better solution is, in my opinion, to do something like this. We put the latest tag back, but we also add a digest. So I'll ask Crane what the digest is for this image. And we've got it here. So this part here is what's called a digest. It's a hash based on the contents of the image. And this is like a superpower. It means that everyone that pulls that digest will get exactly the same image. Not nearly the same image, exactly the same image. And if someone tries to tamper with it, the contents will change and it'll no longer match our digest, so it's going to throw an error. So this directly addresses the major problem with the latest tag. But admittedly, it does open up some new issues. Namely, how do you get this digest and how do you keep it updated? First, let's look at getting the digest. So we can just simply do docker pull cgout-dev chainguard go latest. And that gives me the digest right here. But that does mean pulling the image to my local computer, and it also means I have to try and parse the digest out of here. There is a slightly nicer tool, which is docker buildx image tools inspect. So let's try that. So here we get the digest sort of near the top, and we also actually get, this is the digest of the index, but we also get a platform specific digest. So here's the digest for the AMD64 image, and here's the digest for the ARM64 image. However, I actually prefer Crane, so you can look at this tool called Crane for working with containers. It has a lot of useful functionality, but there's a Crane digest tool, and if I do cgr.dev chainguard go latest, I get the same version, but it just gives me it directly, so I can just easily embed that in scripts, etc. But what about updating the digest to newer versions? To do this at Chainguard, we use a tool called Digestibot. Now, Digestibot is a GitHub app that runs on a cron job and will update any digest it finds in Docker files or Kubernetes YAML to the latest version. But there's also Renovate and Dependabot, which you may well have heard of already or be using already, and they can do much the same thing. And one really nice thing about Renovate in particular is that it can update and add digests in place. So you can combine the find the digest step and the update the digest step, if you like. And that takes me back to the point about versions. If I'm using the tag 1.25.7, does that mean my application requires that specific version? As in it will break if I use a different version? Well, maybe not. But you could use the tag 1.25 or even just 1, which would imply that you're happy with automatically updating except across major versions, for example. Now, in a lot of cases, I think that just using latest is simpler. And provided you have a decent test suite, it will avoid the problem of forgotten projects getting stuck on old versions. And that's why I think the latest tag can be the best solution for security. Provided it's part of a well-engineered update strategy with proper testing and image pinning, it will ensure that you keep your images up to date, maintainable, and reproducible. As ever, let me know what you think.